wonderful good day to you. This is Owen McCafferty, again, bringing a series of very short narratives on items to consider and think about in managing and growing your veterinary practice, dental practice, or practice of dermatology. And as you well know, I follow the news quite a bit because it has an impact in terms of investment in my practice as well as the practices of my clients and where things are going. So the title of this very short narrative is it's more than just the election for the little guy. And I know everyone focuses in on party affiliation and everything relating to it, but frankly I focus in on what will be good, number one, for America, number two, for the clients that we serve, and number three, the long-term impact for the generations that follow. So with those three issues in mind, I'd like to, let's say, transcend what's occurring in the election process and your specific opinions, and I'd like to go into some of the things that will have a bearing on the long run. One of the first things is the massive numbers of layoffs that are occurring. Now, layoffs can occur in a variety of different ways, but they all have the equally disruptive issue. So, for example, folks that unload and load vessels that do transatlantic activity in the borders of the United States, specifically now on the East Coast, and most probably functioning into the West Coast. If there is a strike that could be effective on January 15, 2025, that will have a massive bearing in terms of the supply chain. It's also going to mean that longshoremen will have less money to spend, and that trickles down into the economy in a 5-for-1 ratio. But it's more than just the longshoremen. It's also the truckers that take product all across the United States and Canada. It's relating to the impact that's going to occur from the vendors who have little or no product, and then we're going to be forced to lay off people. And every time there is a layoff, it affects an economic reality in somewhere between a 4 to 6 times ratio. 4 times ratio if you're laying off very wealthy people that don't spend a lot of money and invest a good part of their earnings into other activities. A 6 times turnover if you're the average Joe like me and you're trying to support a family, or in some instances multiple relatives, because as we all age, gray, paunch, and bald, we accept more responsibilities and we help out more people instead of less people. Finally, the issues relating to the impact of those people who are then laid off and their inability to subsequently invest. So there's a 4 to 6 times ratio in terms of transactional activity. We found all of this occurring. This is not news. Frankly, if you look at the 70s and early 80s, if some of you remember the words Arab oil embargo around 1973, and all of the subsequent impacts and the missteps of our leadership in the United States in the latter part of the 70s, and then what the impact would be into the 80s. And as I said before, thank God for the baby boomers, because the inventory of man hours of the baby boomers, remember, these are folks that were basically affected by the Depression. Their parents and their grandparents were prime participants in the Great Depression. They had an understanding of what it means to work. You didn't have to ask if they wanted overtime or not. They were desperate for overtime. In fact, they would even work with no overtime, in some instances no pay, just so they could learn. I remember that my dental and veterinary clients would often work hours in excess of what was required of them. Of course, they're on salary, just to learn new procedures, just to be involved in the practice. It was not uncommon at one time to see surgeries performed by a general practitioner at 7, 8, 9, 10, and even 11 o'clock at night if they had full-time hospitalization. And they would perform these procedures because they wanted to. They were hungry. They had families to feed. The other factor I look at as an impact in terms of the business area is the drop in the birth rate among Americans. That is, people who are citizens of the United States of America, has dropped to about 1.7, 1.8. We need about a 2.2 to 2.3 ratio of man, woman / children to keep our economic structure going with full employment. That means that a couple marries, they got to have at least 2.2 children. And where they get the 0.2%, I don't know. But the 2.2 children are needed in order to keep equilibrium, because not everybody marries, not everybody has children. And as a result of that, you have to produce more children than just the replicated mother-father. So when that falls, as it has fallen horribly in Europe, that means that there's going to be a reduction in the capacity to provide a basis of employment that is going to be replicated at a job level, consistency, competency level that will keep the economy going. In other words, if you're an American citizen and you have children who are also American citizens, the probability is that they're going to be better schooled, they're going to be more competent in what they do than folks that are fleeing from a horrible environment in an economy where it's difficult just to exist. So having not only an increase in the population base, but having a population base where the children that are of issue can then be able to keep the economy going. Next issue is the number of children who are not able to be brought in. And again, that used to be a biologic and theological issue. It's now apparently a hot political issue. So I'm not going to go there because everybody understands the issue and you have your own applicability. But from looking at it from the standpoint of the economy, those children are not being brought into this world, and they're probably not being brought into the world by parents who would be prime candidates for raising those children very well and having them very productive citizens and taxpayers in the United States. I'm looking at all of these factors and just saying that we have to be deciding about what the long run is going to be and not focus so much in on the elections that proceed. The next issue is fiscal policy. And this goes well above and beyond whatever political party's in there, because it's an issue of those that administer to those that govern. And those that administer to those that govern make decisions on your life that affect you on a daily basis that you'll really never understand. And that's been going on for, all the way back to the early 30s. And what it means is that you are going to be affected by fiscal policies, the Federal Reserve Board's decisions, some of which I agree with and some of which I just scratch my head and say, what idiot is thinking about this, have such a direct impact. And I'm saying specifically the $36 trillion approximately of indebtedness that the United States has right now is of such a high and lofty nature that most probably the devaluation of our fiat in terms of real purchasing power has been bore on the backs of the citizens. And in fact, the taxation of the citizens is so small in relationship to the devaluation of the capital, I sometimes scratch my head and say, why do we even have a tax system in the first place? Because it seems like we just spend money, we print it, and far in excess of anything that we could ever hope to take in. And we're not going to be able to continue that. So we have to be considering alternative currencies that will be accepted on a world market that will be safer than the continuation of the currency that we have in the United States. Now, that's not political, that's just realistic. If the US dollar no longer becomes the standard of transactional acceptance worldwide, we're in some deep trouble. You hear an awful lot about it, but it really is true. So these are factors that we're looking at. It has nothing to do with the election. Because if one party comes in and attempts to completely resolve issues, they can't resolve issues that go back to the 1930s in 4 base years. That's just not going to happen. So this has been a continuing activity. If you want to make reference to it, both Democrats and Republicans are equally as culpable. And the end result is going to be that we have to make decisions that may not be epic in terms of 100 years or 1,000 years, but certainly within the next 5 to 10 years. The next issue relates to energy. Energy drives our economy. Energy not only in terms of electricity or petroleum products, but also energy that can be developed for the future. Everyone looks at solar as being the answer. And the reality is we don't have the technology to capture enough solar so that we can power things and still have a country that we can grow crops on. So there's going to be a lot of challenges that evolve. Our infrastructure needs massive investment. The power grid is in very poor shape. I was in Las Vegas once, and gosh, they had a power outage in the Northeast. I was living in Cleveland at the time, and it was affecting us because there was problems at a power generation plant in Niagara Falls. So it's happening, and it's happening with a vengeance. Drive on the road. If we have more battery-operated vehicles, they're going to be heavier. And if they're heavier, they're going to be destroying the pavement a lot quicker, which means that we will have to be spending more money from an infrastructure basis, and that probably means that the taxation that is going on a gallon of gas to pay for road improvements will be transferred to a wattage tax that's not only affected by what you use on the road, but will affect all of the other utilization of electricity. So we got to look in the future, see where things sit, maybe not focus as much on the political side, at least in your own practice, as what the longer range impact is in where things are going and where they're growing. The last thing I want to talk about is people. We have people right now that are degreed but not educated, or they are degreed and educated in areas that have no practical utilization. Specifically, people still confuse the difference between arithmetic and mathematics. If I hear again the classic competent refrain, well, do the math. It's like nails on a chalkboard. It just drives me nuts. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division cannot be performed in the English-speaking people's world without the assistance of a cell phone or what we used to call a calculator. I know some of you might remember what a calculator was. I remember performing division and multiplication on a comptometer, and that shows you how back. In fact, I bet most of you don't even know what a comptometer is. Or we would use an adding machine for multiple addition, which is multiplication, and multiple subtraction, which is division, when we're doing calculations, making sure, of course, that we don't slip those decimal points. So there's going to be so many different aspects arising, and I know with the election going on and the drama that relates to it, that everybody is focusing in on that. And yes, it's going to have an impact in our economy. And if one party over another screws up, the other party's going to be in. And eventually, one party screwing up is going to affect another. And the American spirit, the fierce love of independence and the reverence for their fellow Americans is my bank of where the future lies, and not any specific political party, as evidenced by the fact that I am a very proud independent voter. So I'd like to at least throw these things out to you. Don't get too focused in on what's going politically. It's great drama. There's a real problem in a system where it costs hundreds of millions of dollars to secure a position. There's something immoral about it. And that position is for voting for a period of time of being in power anywhere from a year to 6 years, with no limitation in many of the positions for a limit of time that you can serve. And it always just astounds me how people can come out with more money than they came in when you know what a civil servant's pay is. So with all that in mind, I just want to say, don't be too concerned about what's going on in the political structure. It's grand theater. It's something that is kind of like the Colosseum and the gladiators in the Colosseum. It keeps the masses occupied. But the real issue is the long-term issue, the demographic issues that we recited. People are a factor, that people have to be not only degreed but educated, that we really have to have treasury, and that treasury has to be capable of having money available for a rainy day. And it's not going to happen at a global level. It's certainly not going to happen at a national level, but it's got to happen in your family. So you got to be saving. You got to be looking for options. The political structure is going to have a bearing. In fact, my partner, who is also my beloved son, who's a CPA, we're in the process of looking for an alternative space, either to buy or to lease. And we do look at the political structure because that has a bearing in terms of depreciable benefit, structure, interest rates, and availability for goods and services. But the best thing that I can say is that we will always have taxes, we'll always have death. So two of the professions that I think have a really good future are accounting, despite all of the issues about artificial intelligence, and funeral services, because we're always going to need morticians. So just a little thought, just a little thing to peddle. But what I think you want to do is look to the factors other than just the political structure. It's an exciting time. It's an honor to be in such a blessed country as the United States of America. My family fled from Ireland for religious and economic freedom. And to be here in the United States is just such a treasure. This truly is a great gift that we are permitted to participate. With that in mind, and I want to say thank you very much to Professional Fusion for allowing me to talk about things for the common Joe other than just the political structure. Thank you very much.